Level 1, the conscript. You are 18 years old, and the Russian Federation requires 12 months of your life. Conscription is not optional. The military registration office, the Voyenkomat, sends a summons and you report, and you are processed into the armed forces the way raw material is processed into a factory, quickly, without sentiment, and with the assumption that the individual is subordinate to the system in all things. You are a ryadovoy, a private, the lowest rank in the Russian military hierarchy. You are assigned to a unit, and the unit may be infantry, artillery, armor, signals, or, if your physical fitness scores were exceptional, and your psychological evaluation indicated the correct combination of aggression and obedience, you may be selected for a Spetsnaz brigade. Spetsnaz, Special Nogo Naznachenia, special purpose. The word covers a constellation of units across the Russian military and security services, GRU Spetsnaz, under the main intelligence directorate of the General Staff, FSB units like Alpha Group and Vimpel, Naval Spetsnaz, and the newer Special Operations Forces Command, the KSSO, which was established in 2009 and modeled after Western SOF structures. But the original and most numerous are the GRU Spetsnaz brigades, formed in 1949 during the early Cold War to conduct reconnaissance and sabotage behind NATO lines in the event of a war that everyone expected and no one wanted. The concept was developed by Ilya Starinov, the grandfather of Spetsnaz, who fought as a guerrilla against the Germans in the Great Patriotic War and codified what he learned into a doctrine of unconventional warfare that emphasized flexibility, speed, and the ability to operate deep behind enemy lines with minimal support. You are not Starinov. You are a conscript from Novosibirsk or Rostov-on-Don or a village in Dagestan, and you have been selected because you are physically strong and psychologically resilient, and because the unit needs bodies, and your body tested well. That is how it begins, not with ideology. With a test score. Level 2, the training. Basic military training in Russia is shorter and more brutal than its Western equivalents. The culture is different. The Russian military does not invest in the individual soldier the way the American or British military does, because the Russian military has always operated on the principle that mass compensates for individual quality and that suffering builds cohesion faster than education. You learn to march. You learn to shoot the AK-74 or the newer AK-12. You learn basic fieldcraft, patrolling, camouflage, land navigation. Then the Spetsnaz-specific training begins, and the intensity increases by an order of magnitude. Weapons handling across every platform the brigade operates, assault rifles, sniper rifles, RPGs, grenade launchers, crew-served weapons, fast rappelling from helicopters, explosives training, demolition charges, improvised devices breaching, airborne training, because the preferred method of Spetsnaz insertion is parachute assault from fixed-wing aircraft, and every operator must qualify. Hand-to-hand combat, primarily Sambo, the Russian martial art developed in the 1920s that combines judo, wrestling, and striking into a system designed for military application. Combat diving for naval Spetsnaz units, alpine techniques for mountain operations in the Caucasus and Central Asia, emergency medical training with the understanding that behind enemy lines there's no medevac helicopter and no field hospital and no resupply, and the man next to you is the only medical infrastructure that exists. You learn tracking and patrolling techniques. Spetsnazovцы are trained to walk single file in each other's footsteps, so the size and direction of the patrol cannot be determined from tracks. Specialized boots with reversed soles have been developed to disguise the direction of movement. In the Cold War, some units trained with boots that mimicked the tread patterns of NATO countries' footwear, and the other training, the one that doesn't appear in the official curriculum. Dedovshchina, the hazing system that pervades the Russian military and that in Spetsnaz units is particularly severe because the institutional culture regards extreme physical punishment as a legitimate tool for building toughness. Senior conscripts brutalize junior conscripts. It is illegal. It is universal. It is the shadow curriculum that produces men who can endure what no training program officially sanctions. Level 3. The Contractnik. Your 12 months of conscription end and you face a choice. Leave the military and return to the civilian economy, which in many parts of Russia offers limited prospects, or sign a contract, become a Contractnik, a professional soldier, and remain in the Spetsnaz brigade as a career serviceman. The pay is modest by Western standards, but significant by Russian ones. A contract Spetsnaz soldier earns 40,000 to 80,000 rubles per month in base pay, with combat bonuses that can double or triple that figure during deployments. Since 2013, under reforms initiated by Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu, the Russian military has shifted toward a professional contract force, and GRU Spetsnaz brigades are now composed primarily of Contractniki rather than conscripts. You sign the contract. You are still a Ryadovoy or perhaps a Yefreitor, a private first class, one stripe, the first rung above the floor. But you are now a professional. The training deepens. You specialize. Snipers must engage stationary targets at 600 meters and moving targets, 2 to 10 feet per second of lateral movement at 500 meters. Demolitions specialists learn to construct explosive devices from commercially available materials that could be found in any hardware store in any country where the brigade might operate. Communication specialists learn encrypted radio procedures, signals intelligence collection, and the operation of equipment that is frequently a generation behind what Western SOF units carry, but that functions in conditions where more sophisticated technology fails. Reconnaissance specialists learn long-range surveillance, target acquisition, pattern of life analysis, and the art of remaining unseen in hostile territory for 48 to 72 hours with minimal food and water and no communication with headquarters. The brigade structure organizes you into a battalion-sized independent special designation detachment, an OOSN of approximately 500 personnel, which is further divided into company-sized units. Your world narrows to the detachment. The men you train with are the men you will deploy with, and the men you may die with, and the bond is forged not through ceremony but through shared suffering. Level 4, the Sergeant. You are promoted. Mladshi Sergeant, Junior Sergeant, or Sergeant. In Western militaries, the NCO Corps is the backbone of the army. In Russia, the NCO tradition is fundamentally different. There's no equivalent of the career NCO, who spends 20 years as a sergeant major, accumulating institutional knowledge and mentoring generations of soldiers. The Russian sergeant is simply a soldier with marginally more training and marginally more authority. The career NCO, the backbone of Western military effectiveness, is largely non-existent in the Russian system. This is not an oversight. It is a structural feature of a military that concentrates authority in the officer corps and treats enlisted ranks as executors of orders rather than independent decision makers. But in Spetsnaz, the gap is narrower. The nature of special operations, small teams operating autonomously behind enemy lines, demands initiative at every level. As a sergeant in a Spetsnaz detachment, you lead a small team. You plan patrol routes. You make decisions about movement, concealment, and engagement that in a conventional Russian unit would be made by an officer. The war in Chechnya taught these lessons in blood. In the First Chechen War, beginning in 1994, Spetsnaz units were committed to combat in Grozny and the surrounding mountains alongside conventional forces that were poorly trained, poorly led, and catastrophically unprepared for urban warfare against a motivated guerrilla force. Spetsnaz units suffered heavy casualties. The Second Chechen War, beginning in 1999, was different. The lessons had been absorbed. Spetsnaz operated in small teams conducting targeted killings of separatist leaders, Shamil Basayev, Ibn al-Khattab, Aslan Maskadov, with precision that demonstrated what the units were capable of when properly employed. Level 5, the Starshina, Senior Sergeant, Starshina, the highest enlisted rank before the warrant officer tier. You've been in the brigade for 5 to 8 years. You've deployed to Chechnya or Syria or both. In Syria, beginning in 2015, Russian Spetsnaz operated alongside Syrian government forces and sometimes independently, conducting reconnaissance, target acquisition for Russian airstrikes, and direct action missions against Islamic State and opposition forces. The deployment was smaller than the Western public understood, often just dozens of operators at a time, but the impact was disproportionate because Spetsnaz teams provided the intelligence that guided Russian precision munitions and the ground truth that satellite imagery cannot capture. You've learned what combat teaches that training cannot simulate, that plans dissolve on contact with the enemy, that communication fails at the worst possible moment, that the man who was beside you 10 seconds ago is now dead, and you must continue the mission because the mission does not pause for grief. You are the senior enlisted man in your team. The young contractniki look to you the way you once looked to the Starshina who trained you, with a combination of respect and wariness, because experience in the Russian military commands deference, but also carries the weight of everything the experienced man has survived and everything he has done and allowed and witnessed in the surviving. Russia does not produce soldiers who question orders publicly. It produces soldiers who endure orders and who carry the consequences of those orders inward, where they accumulate like sediment in a riverbed, invisible from the surface but increasingly heavy in the body that holds them. The distinction between combat veteran and war criminal is drawn by international law and observed by international courts. In the Russian Spetsnaz, that line has been contested and often erased from Chechnya to Syria to Ukraine. You carry whatever you carry. The institution does not ask and does not provide the infrastructure of psychological support that Western militaries offer. Level 6, the Praporshchik, Warrant Officer. The rank was abolished during the 2008 military reforms under Defense Minister Anatoly Serdyukov, who eliminated approximately 140,000 warrant officer positions across the armed forces in an attempt to streamline the force structure. The reform created gaps in technical expertise and unit leadership that were so severe that Serdyukov's successor, Sergei Shoigu, reinstated the rank in 2013. You are a Praporshchik. You occupy the space between the senior enlisted ranks and the junior commissioned officers. You are a technical specialist, weapons, communications, demolitions, intelligence, with years of operational experience and the institutional knowledge that only long service in a specific unit produces. In a Western military, this role would be filled by a senior NCO. In the Russian system, the Praporshchik fills the void that the absence of a career NCO tradition creates. You train junior soldiers. You maintain the unit's technical capabilities. You are the man who knows where the equipment is stored, how it functions, what breaks first, and how to fix it in the field with improvised materials when the supply chain, which in the Russian military is never as reliable as the doctrine assumes, fails. The Praporshchik is the institutional memory of the unit. When the officers rotate, you remain. When the conscripts cycle through, you remain. You are the constant in a system designed around rotation and replacement. Your pay is higher, your quarters are marginally better, your authority is real within the unit, but invisible outside it, because the Russian military system recognizes officers and tolerates enlisted men, and regards Praporshchiki as something in between that the system needs but never fully respects. Level 7, the Lieutenant. You are a commissioned officer. You earned your commission at the Ryazan Guard's Higher Airborne Command School, RVVDKU, which trains officers for both the airborne forces, the VDV, and the GRU Spetsnaz through a semi-separate training program that emphasizes physical prowess, tactical leadership, and the intelligence-oriented skills that distinguish Spetsnaz officers from conventional infantry officers. The course lasts 4 to 5 years and combines academic military education with intensive physical training that is among the most demanding in the Russian armed forces. You graduate as a lieutenant or a mladshai lieutenant, junior lieutenant, and you are assigned to a Spetsnaz brigade where you command a platoon-sized element within the OOSN. You are 22 or 23 years old. You have a military education that included parachute qualification, at minimum 5 jumps, including at least 1 at night and 1 with full equipment, small unit tactics, intelligence collection methods, foreign language instruction at a basic conversational level relevant to your brigade's area of operations, and the doctrine of deep reconnaissance and sabotage that has defined the Spetsnaz mission since Starinov codified it in the 1940s. Your doctrine teaches you to operate in teams of 8 to 12, to penetrate 50 to 500 kilometers behind enemy lines, to identify and destroy strategic targets, command posts, nuclear weapon storage sites, communications nodes, airfields, logistics hubs, and to exfiltrate before the enemy understands what happened. This is the theory. The reality, as Chechnya and Ukraine have demonstrated, is that Spetsnaz are frequently committed to missions that bear no resemblance to the doctrine. You are responsible for 30 to 40 men. Many of them are older than you. Many of them have combat experience that you do not yet possess. The relationship between a young lieutenant and his praporshchik is the relationship that makes or breaks the platoon. If you listen, the praporshchik teaches you what Ryazan could not. If you don't listen, your men will know. And a Spetsnaz platoon led by an officer who won't listen to his experienced NCOs is a platoon that will suffer unnecessarily. Level 8, the Kapitan to Polkovnik. Captain through Colonel. The officer corps climbs through the grades. Kapitan, Mayor, Podpolkovnik, Polkovnik. The Kapitan commands a company-sized unit within the OOSN. The Mayor serves on the detachment staff or commands a specialized element. The Podpolkovnik, Lieutenant Colonel, may command an OOSN of 500 personnel. The Polkovnik, Colonel, commands the entire Spetsnaz brigade, which consists of multiple OOSNs plus support elements totaling several thousand personnel. The highest rank typically achieved within the GRU Spetsnaz structure is Polkovnik. For higher aspirations, general officer rank, the path leads out of the Spetsnaz brigades and into the GRU's intelligence directorate, or into the broader general staff, because the GRU's upper ranks are dominated by intelligence officers rather than special operations commanders. Since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the Spetsnaz brigades have been assigned to Ministry of Defense groups of forces and committed to combat that bore no resemblance to their doctrinal mission of deep reconnaissance and sabotage. They were used as assault infantry. The 3rd Guard Spetsnaz Brigade, one of Russia's most elite units, was caught in the Ukrainian counteroffensive near Lyman in September 2022 and fought a desperate defensive action. A Pentagon assessment leaked in April 2023 reported that all but one of 5 Spetsnaz brigades had suffered significant losses. One brigade had only 125 personnel active out of 900 deployed. Elite forces used as cannon fodder. The Polkovnik commanding that brigade made decisions within a system that did not permit him to refuse the mission and did not provide the reinforcements or the strategic coherence that the mission required. Command at this level in the Russian military is the exercise of authority within constraints that are simultaneously absolute and absurd. Level 9, the veteran. You leave the service or the service leaves you. In the Russian military, retirement benefits are modest, pensions are calculated on years of service and rank, and the transition to civilian life is not supported by the institutional apparatus that Western militaries provide. There is no VA equivalent. There are veterans organizations. but they operate with limited funding and limited political influence. You are 35 or 40 years old. You have spent a decade or more in the Spetsnaz. Your body carries the evidence. Injuries from training, from combat, from parachute landings on frozen ground, from the accumulated damage of a career spent in a military that values endurance over self-preservation. Some veterans find work in private security. The Russian PMC industry, including the Wagner Group and its successors, recruited heavily from former Spetsnaz personnel for operations in Syria, Libya, the Central African Republic, Mali, Mozambique, and Ukraine. The pay is better than military pay. The oversight is non-existent. The legal framework is deliberately ambiguous because the Russian state uses PMCs as instruments of foreign policy that can be deployed without the political cost of acknowledging official military operations. The moral architecture of private military work in Russian-adjacent conflict zones is a question that the institution never taught you to ask because the institution was never designed to value the asking of questions. You were designed to execute. Other veterans disappear into the civilian economy of post-Soviet Russia, driving taxis, working construction, running small businesses in provincial cities, drinking in apartments where the heating works intermittently and the walls are thin. The rate of alcoholism and suicide among Russian military veterans is significant and poorly documented because documenting it would require acknowledging a problem that the state prefers to attribute to individual weakness rather than institutional failure. Level 10, the cycle. Right now, somewhere in Russia, an 18-year-old is reporting to a voyenkomat. He received his summons 3 weeks ago. He's from Krasnoyarsk or Makhachkala, or a town in the Urals whose name doesn't appear on maps that foreigners use. He is physically strong because he grew up in a place where physical strength was the primary currency of survival. He's heard of Spetsnaz. He's seen the videos, the martial arts demonstrations, the brick breaking, the flaming obstacle courses that the Russian military publishes for recruitment and propaganda purposes, and that bear approximately the same relationship to actual Spetsnaz operations as a Hollywood action film bears to actual combat. He doesn't know about the Dadovshchina, or the Kontraktnik pipeline, or the deployment to Syria, or the brigade that was reduced from 900 to 125 in Ukraine. He doesn't know that the doctrine he'll train on, deep reconnaissance and sabotage behind enemy lines, was developed during the Cold War for a war against NATO that never came, and that the actual war he may fight will look nothing like the doctrine. It may involve assaulting prepared positions in trenches in eastern Ukraine in a role that contradicts everything his unit was designed to do, led by officers who were never trained for attrition warfare, alongside men who signed contracts, expecting special operations, and received industrial slaughter instead. He knows the word Spetsnaz. It carries weight in his world the way the word Marine carries weight in America, or the word SAS carries weight in Britain, not as a job description, but as an identity that elevates the man who wears it above the ordinary mass of conscripts and kontraktniki who populate the regular army. He reports to the voyenkomat. He is processed. He is assigned. The cycle begins again.